Have you ever asked yourself, what if your mother, an elderly woman just carrying groceries home, was shot dead by police right on her front steps? And no one stood up, no one investigated, and the entire system chose silence. This is not a movie. This is a story that could unfold right in the heart of America, where justice doesn't always arrive through a courtroom, but through an old camera, a forgotten recording, and a son who returns, not for revenge, but to tear away every layer of deception the system tried to bury. Watch until the end, because you'll come to understand. Some mothers don't need a weapon to start a war, but their story can shake a nation to its core. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to update our latest videos. Brookgate District, 7:42 a.m. Tuesday. A light morning sun. No one could have predicted that the first tremor of what was to come would arrive in complete and haunting silence. A faded green canvas tote swayed gently with the steps of Darius Knight, 72, a former nurse who once served on the battlefield in Iraq. She had just left Mercy Hill Drugstore, a place so familiar she could walk the aisles blindfolded and still know where every bottle was shelved. In her left hand, she held groceries. In her right, she gripped the rusted latch of the iron gate at 165 Lavender Crescent, ready to end her routine morning with a few moments of rest in her modest home. She never knew it would be the last steps she'd ever take on her own 2 feet. A police cruiser from the Eastbridge Police Department, Unit 4721, pulled up abruptly. No sirens, no loudspeaker, just the violent screech of brakes slicing through the morning calm, leaving a black scar across the pavement. Officer Logan Reed, young, hot-blooded and tense, jumped out with his weapon drawn, as if chasing down an armed suspect. Lorraine froze, confused, unable to process what was unfolding. She slowly raised her hand, an empty palm lined with calluses earned from years as a nurse and single mother. "Is there something wrong, officer?" Reed didn't answer. He didn't assess. He didn't verify. He shouted like a man trained more by fear than by justice. "Hands up, right now!" Lorraine didn't move. Her eyes didn't tremble, only widened in disbelief. She had stitched open wounds under mortar fire in Mosul, held dying soldiers in her arms as sandstorms swallowed the sky. A gun in her face didn't make her afraid, but the senselessness of it did. And then a sharp crack. A gunshot split the fragile peace of a neighborhood too familiar with fractures. Darius Knight collapsed on her own porch, her grocery bag spilled beside her, a few cartons of milk, a bunch of celery, a roll of paper towels. A lone can of beans rolled slowly down the steps, its clinking echo cutting deeper into the quiet than the bullet ever could. Blood seeped through her pale gray blouse, trailing through the weathered cracks in the brick. A single crimson line that no amount of forgetting would ever wash away. No one ran to hold her. No one screamed. Only curtains were yanked shut. A small handycam trembled in the hands of a girl who had been filming birds on the roof. A boy sat frozen on his bicycle, feet still suspended above the ground. And at a remote rest stop hundreds of miles away, Darius Knight, her son, a retired special operative, opened his encrypted phone. A cold system message flashed across the screen. "Fatality confirmed, civilian. Incident ID, Lavender-165. He didn't cry. He didn't call anyone. He simply stood up and activated something the system was never built to withstand. A son's campaign, not for revenge, but to ensure his mother wouldn't die unheard. Maryland rest stop, 5 a.m. Before the morning sun had a chance to touch the ground, a storm was already forming. not in the skies, but in the heart of a son. Darius Knight, 38, sat alone in the corner of an abandoned roadside cafe along the interstate. In front of him, an encrypted phone displayed only a single line of text. Lorraine Knight, 165 Lavender Crescent, deceased. No cause, no description, no one held accountable. Darius stared at the notification as if it were the last unsolved code from his time in the Guardian Tier Command. He'd watched comrades fall to delayed explosives, infiltrated terror networks in Aleppo, survived 11 months on assignments that would never make it into military records. But nothing had ever pressed so heavily on his chest as this. He closed the phone, stood up, didn't speak a word, didn't leave a receipt. Only the night shift clerk behind the counter trembled slightly, as if he'd just seen a man no longer meant for this world. 2 hours later, Darius crossed the Georgia state line, turning off into Brookgate District in a rental car with no GPS. A black hoodie, worn jeans, cheap sunglasses, no visible weapon. But every step he took carried the weight of a mission. "I didn't come for comfort. I came to trace the blood." He stopped near an open lot by Old Mill Park, surveying from a distance through a military-grade monocular. 165 Lavender Crescent, the home he grew up in, where his mother once taught him right from wrong with a single look. Now roped off with faded yellow tape. No officers, no ambulance, no posted guard, only the dried stain trailing from the porch. A message written in flesh. Darius didn't approach. He circled behind a neighboring house, crouched behind a line of rotting wooden fences, and inserted earpieces into his surveillance interceptor. A field tool built to detect hidden cameras and rogue radio frequencies. The results? Weak eavesdropping signal from his mother's home. A homemade camera installed in apartment 162 aimed at the front door. 3 public service radio channels had just gone silent the moment he entered the zone. "The system's still watching," he murmured. As night fell, Darius slipped into his mother's house. Quiet as moonlight. No lights, no doors shut loud. Every step he took felt like walking through landmines laid in memory. The groceries were still on the table, celery, milk, and a can of beans yet to be shelved. The photo of him and his mother after his discharge still hung neatly on the wall. But what made him stop was the unfinished knitting on the sofa. Red yarn still looped between 2 needles. "She wasn't planning to leave," he whispered. "She was robbed of just one more ordinary day." From his jacket, Darius pulled out a compact encrypted device. He entered a string of commands. Sentinel Protocol, Initiate. User, D. Knight. Auth code, Falcon 1138. The screen flashed red. Warning, activation will trigger National Counterintelligence Alert. Proceed. He didn't hesitate. Yes? At a hidden command center of the Guardian Tier Command, a small light blinked red for the first time in 8 years. Sentinel Protocol had been activated, not for terrorism, not for war, but for a crime buried beneath a badge, inside a government building, wearing the face of law. No gunfire, no official statement, only a son had returned, in the dark. And in his hands was everything the system once taught him, now turned back against the very people who built it. Before any mission, the first thing Darius had learned was this: never trust what the system reveals. Look for what it tries to bury. Inside his mother's neatly kept bedroom, a desk lamp cast its soft glow over pages she had handwritten. Medication lists, bill reminders. But Darius wasn't searching there. He searched where few would think to look. The medicine cabinet drawer, where Lorraine kept a small black cloth-bound notebook. No name, no title. On the first page, only one line. Complaint code 307-ZB-41-Red. Submitted Monday 8:14 a.m. He opened his encrypted phone and accessed the internal complaint database of the Eastbridge Police Department through an old military VPN. Darius entered the code. The result: no matching record found. He tried again, then again, even inputted his mother's landline number. Nothing. No records, no call logs, no indication she had ever reported anything. As if Lorraine Knight had never existed in the government's complaint system. System error, he asked himself. This wasn't a glitch. This was intentional erasure. 3 days before the shooting, Darius reviewed public camera footage from Mercy Hill drugstore, retracing his mother's regular path. And there, one frame froze his breath. Lorraine being stopped by 2 officers, Logan Reed and Kyle Mercer. No warrant, no citation, just scrutinizing looks and an air of suspicion as Lorraine showed her medical paperwork and insurance ID. He replayed the footage 3 times. In the final frame, just as Lorraine turned away, Logan Reed raised his phone, glancing back toward the patrol car. A subtle action. But for Darius, it was the kind of deliberate signaling he'd seen used in war zones, when enemies wanted to erase witnesses without leaving a trace. He dug further into the EPDC, Eastbridge Police Department Communications, internal registry, checking if Lorraine's complaint call had ever been logged. The system returned a raw data fragment. No name label, no voice file, just a coded internal tag. Z-Red nullified, bypass ID, Holloway 227. Darius froze. Holloway. Brent Holloway, the Chief of Internal Operations at Eastbridge. A man with authority to delete or suppress civilian response codes deemed non-urgent. She wasn't forgotten, Darius muttered. She was erased by the signature of someone on the inside. Using military-grade data recovery tools, he managed to reconstruct part of the voicemail Lorraine had left behind. My name is Lorraine Knight. I haven't done anything wrong, but 2 officers, Reed and Mercer, stopped me. I'm concerned. I used to work in military medicine. I'm not used to being looked at like I'm a threat. I just want to know their names, and I want to know what my rights are when someone stares at me like that. Hello? Hello? Is anyone listening? I'm leaving this reference number in case anyone still cares. Then, click. No response, no confirmation. Darius shut the laptop, stood up, opened the nightstand and pulled out his mother's old tape recorder, one of those cassette models from the early 2000s. Inside was a worn-out tape. He pressed play. If anyone hears this, maybe everything I've done won't change a thing. But if I'm killed, know that I tried to do the right thing. Not for me, but for the people like me, who've lived entire lives just trying not to be seen as a threat. In the silence of that night, Darius stared at the tape. It wasn't just a farewell. It was proof. Proof that Lorraine Knight knew she was going to be erased, and she left behind just enough for a son to know exactly where to begin. Want to kill someone? Don't leave a trail of blood, just erase them from the system. But Lorraine Knight didn't die without leaving evidence. She left behind a minefield of data, and Darius was the one who knew how to set it off. The house at 165 Lavender Crescent was eerily quiet, as if no gunshot had ever echoed through it. Everything remained in its place. The antique porcelain teacups on the cupboard, the hand-embroidered tablecloth Lorraine had made herself. But Darius knew the most suspicious place is always the one that seems most peaceful. He examined every inch. Under ultraviolet light, a few dust trails looked oddly disturbed. At the nightstand's wooden drawer, he spotted 2 faint fingerprints and a crease at the bottom right corner. A simple concealment, but enough to warn someone who knew what to look for. Darius opened the second drawer. Beneath the fabric liner, a piece of foam padding had been precisely cut, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside it, a black notebook with red-stitched edges untitled. A 128-gigabyte microSD card sealed tightly with grey electrical tape, a TerraSafe portable hard drive heavier than usual, and a single handwritten note. If you're reading this, believe me, I prepared for the worst. Darius inserted the card and drive into his encrypted system. After bypassing 3 layers of PIN security and a voice print verification recorded by Lorraine herself, the data interface opened, structured like a military operations dashboard. 1. Outgoing call logs and hotline recordings. Lorraine had recorded 5 calls to the Eastbridge Police Department within 48 hours after the Mercy Hill drugstore stop. All of them were either cut off mid-sentence, had no audio saved, or were rejected by the system, something that only happens when a call is flagged internally. Second, GPS trajectory of Patrol Unit 4721, the unit driven by Logan Reed. Data from the past 3 weeks revealed 14 undocumented stops in predominantly black residential areas. 5 incidents of aggressive behavior logged via in-car behavioral sensors. 3 instances where the GPS tracker was illegally turned off, coinciding with 3 citizen complaints of missing patrol records. Third, map of recurring stop-and-check locations. Using a mapping app, Lorraine had tagged 6 hotspots around Brookgate District where unauthorized stops frequently occurred. Officer names appeared repeatedly: Logan Reed, Kyle Mercer, and several others yet to be verified. Fourth, video footage from nearby camera at drugstore. A file Lorraine had downloaded herself from a public street camera near Mercy Hill. The video showed her being stopped. No suspicious movements, no resistance. She simply stood, presenting her ID. Then Logan Reed glanced up at the camera and smirked, a smirk of ownership, as if to say, "I'm untouchable." Darius turned to the notebook. On the first page was a hand-drawn map, a crude but detailed layout of flagged violations. Red arrows, black dots, slash marks. She hadn't just logged locations, she logged dates, officer names, behavior, and the demeanor of those being stopped. A 72-year-old woman. No formal training, no system access. But she had built a civilian surveillance model, as sophisticated as any internal review board. Darius held the notebook, his eyes welled. She didn't just leave behind evidence, she left a system, and the belief that I'd know what to do with it. He plugged in his earpiece and played the final audio recording, saved under the file name, Final Entry L.K. Knight. If my son finds this, it means I'm no longer here. But I believe you're still alive, and if you are, you'll act. Not for me, but for the others, the ones this system calls statistical outliers. The ones who are never meant to have a voice. Use this data to dismantle what they believe no one can touch. As the tape ended, the streetlight outside cast a soft glow through the window, illuminating a photo of Lorraine Knight on the wall. She was in a nurse's uniform, cradling a tiny brown-skinned baby, her eyes facing forward, fearless. Darius pressed the encryption key. The Sentinel protocol began to boot. A red command line scrolled across the screen. Response mode. Activated system-wide data compilation in progress. The campaign had begun. The data was ready. And this time, the system would never be able to erase her name again. Not everyone carries a weapon, but some carry eyes, and this time, those eyes did not look away. Behind 165 Lavender Crescent, in the narrow alley overgrown with moss and wild bougainvillea, 11-year-old Naomi Rhodes was hunched over the handycam her mother gave her for her birthday. It was an old camera, one her grandfather had once used to film church services. But today, Naomi was using it to film sparrows building a nest. Until a crack, loud as an explosion, made her jump and turn around. The camera was still rolling. Naomi didn't understand what had just happened, but she instinctively turned the lens and saw Mrs. Lorraine Knight collapsed on her porch, grocery bags scattered, blood beginning to pool across the tiled steps. In the frame, a police officer, Logan Reed, with his gun drawn, standing less than 5 meters from the victim. No verbal warning, no third person present, no weapon in Lorraine's hands. The clip was exactly 17 seconds long, no dialogue, no effects, just truth, raw and merciless. 3 days later, while authorities still issued nothing more than a brief statement claiming internal investigation is underway, Naomi brought the video to her father, Jonathan Rhodes, an appliance repairman who lived at the end of the street. He watched the footage, his face turned to stone. This can't stay in the house. He didn't call the police. He called the one person he trusted from the old civil rights marches, Reverend Caleb Mason. Hours later, in the cramped office of Horizon News Network, veteran journalist Diana Morrow opened the clip. No color correction, no edits. She sat in silence, then issued one command. Front page, immediately, nationwide. Back in Naomi's yard, she had no idea she'd just become a witness in history. Darius arrived at her house late in the afternoon. He didn't knock. He stood outside watching Naomi draw with chalk on the front walk. In her hand was the old handycam. She looked up and recognized his face. "You're the man in the photo on Mrs. Lorraine's altar, right?" Darius gave a quiet nod. Naomi glanced around, then ran inside and returned with a small parcel wrapped in newspaper. She handed it to him. "I made backups, one for the news station, one for you. I thought, if they delete the other one, you might need a copy, just in case the system forgets again." Darius took the parcel and sat on the steps. He didn't promise. He didn't thank her in words. He just looked at Naomi and nodded, once, enough for her to know. From now on, he wouldn't let that tape disappear. That night, when the video aired across the nation, the headline read, "No warning, no weapon, a death in broad daylight." And in several Eastbridge police offices, phones began to ring non-stop. Encrypted internal emails were sent in a rush, and those who once thought they were out of the storm's reach began to realize the storm had arrived. And in the eye of that storm, an 11-year-old girl, an old handycam, and 17 seconds of truth were enough to make an entire system tremble. Some battles are not fought on battlefields, and some enemies wear the same uniform we do. As the footage captured by Naomi aired across the country, the Eastbridge Police Department issued a statement. "We are committed to transparency and will conduct a thorough internal investigation." But Darius Knight didn't wait for promises. He knew that system, and he knew it would never truly investigate itself. That evening, Darius returned to his mother's old house. He placed his encrypted laptop on the wooden table beside the cactus Lorraine once tended. On the screen, a faded logo from a classified Guardian tier command program. Black background, red text, Sentinel protocol, dormant, activate. Darius sat still. His eyes didn't blink as he typed the triple-layer security codes. Initiate, yes. A stream of encrypted signals was sent, not through official military channels, but via independent networks established back during the peak of Middle East conflict operations. They didn't require authorization. They only required a reason. Sentinel protocol was built for moments no one dared to acknowledge. When a system was corrupted from within and justice became a luxury, it was only entrusted to elite officers who had served in Tier 5 conflict zones. Darius had once commanded such a unit, and today he was activating it for his mother. Within 12 minutes of launch, the civilian data architecture of Eastbridge Police Department began to light up with red flags. Missing records re-emerged from buried archives. Every GPS ping from patrol car number 4721, driven by Logan Reed, was reconstructed from satellite backups. On the wall, Darius pinned a collage of printed files, photographs, real-time maps. At the center, a photo of Lorraine taped off on her front steps, June 12th. From that image, red strings stretched to ignored complaint logs, unjustified traffic stops across Brookgate, Logan Reed's internal file, 3 prior accusations, 0 disciplinary action. The name Brent Holloway, area supervisor, who had signed off on every dismissal. A short buzz from his secure phone broke the silence. Incoming transmission, VANTA, Level 4 operative. He picked up. A low, sharp female voice came through. You just activated a nationwide contingency tool. I need to know, do you have evidence? I have the video. I have the data. I have my mother's blood on the cement. That's enough. Good. I'm sending the data packet. And the campaign name. Darius looked up at the photo of Lorraine, in her battlefield nurse uniform, standing amid Afghan dust. Operation Last Salute, the final salute for those the system forgot. That night, with only the soft hum of a ceiling fan filling the room, Darius didn't write a will. He didn't draft a goodbye letter. He wrote a battle plan. Line by line, step by step. Every action, every media contact, every data point to extract, every name that needed to be pulled into the light. Because this time, the enemy wasn't hiding behind sandbags. They were hiding behind business cards and immunity clauses. Want to find a system's weak spot? Look where it deliberately records nothing. At 3 a.m., Darius Knight sat before the large screen that now lit up his mother's former living room, a space that had become his temporary war room. Under the pale blue glow of military-grade equipment, he analyzed the patrol route of vehicle number 4721, Logan Reed's SUV. What he saw made him go still. In the past 29 days, Reed had driven through 7 predominantly black neighborhoods in Brookgate, on average once every night. No official incident reports, no warrants, no post-shift documentation. But there were 3 civilian complaints from 3 different addresses. All shared the same internal notes from the Eastbridge Police Department. Insufficient evidence for investigation. Does not meet violation criteria. Handled internally, no further action required. Using satellite data reconstruction software, Darius cross-referenced traffic camera feeds, Reed's GPS logs, and open-source civilian surveillance inputs. The result? A map appeared on screen. A behavioral net, a predatory pattern. At its center, Logan Reed. Surrounding him, The red pins Lorraine Knight had marked on her old memory card. Darius broke it down. At every stop Reed made, at least one resident reported being searched for suspicious behavior, despite no wrongdoing. Multiple occasions where Reed forgot to turn on his body cam, and at 2 specific locations, traffic camera footage mysteriously disappeared within 5 minutes of Reed's presence. He muttered to himself, "This isn't an accident, it's a routine, a taught, practiced, and protected routine." Using an internal response tracing tool, Darius tracked civilian complaints that had been marked resolved. The result chilled him further. Every one of them had been signed off by the same final reviewer. Brent Holloway, Chief of Internal Oversight, Eastbridge Police Department. Since 2018, Holloway had personally dismissed more than 47 reports involving violent or racially biased conduct by subordinate officers, including Logan Reed, Kyle Mercer, and 3 others. Darius compiled it all into a new schematic. Reed was the executioner. Mercer was the silenced witness. Holloway was the gatekeeper, the complaint system, a door that led nowhere. He pinned the map to the wall. Red strings stretched from name to name, point to point, a web of complicity. Then came a buried audio recording he'd extracted from the internal system, a snippet cut from the official logs. Holloway's voice, cold and matter-of-fact. Reed knows when to act, and when a camera should just malfunction. That's what I need in an officer. No overthinking. Just do the dirty work when it counts. A recording, a map, and a conclusion burned itself into Darius's mind. My mother's death wasn't a mistake. It was the final product of a well-oiled machine. And now, that machine has one missing cog. Me. Sometimes justice doesn't come from a hero on the streets, but from the person who opens the right door inside. 4th floor, Eastbridge Police Department Headquarters, a restricted access zone reserved for mid to senior level personnel. At 1:12 a.m., Lieutenant Jenna Carter, age 36, entered the data surveillance room, carrying a military-grade encrypted hard drive hidden inside her coat pocket. She didn't look directly at the surveillance cameras, because she knew exactly where each one was positioned. As one of the few officers with internal clearance, Jenna used to believe in the system. She used to think, there are still good people on the inside. But it was the hollow look in Logan Reed's eyes as he reported the Lorraine Knight shooting, and the way her complaint file vanished from the system within 6 hours, that made Jenna question things for the first time. Over the 2 weeks following the shooting, Jenna quietly archived access logs from Logan Reed, showing he logged in and edited the incident file just 12 minutes after submitting the official report. A list of search-locked keywords in the internal system, including Reed plus excessive force, Lorraine Knight, Mercy Hill incident. A deleted internal conversation recovered from a hidden audit trail. Mercer. She didn't threaten anyone. Why does it say the suspect was resisting? Reed. Didn't catch that. What did you say? Silence. Reed. Just write it. Unless you want to be the next one under review. Jenna didn't report any of it to her superiors. Instead, she drove to Charlotte, the next city over, home to the Southern Equity Project, a legal organization specializing in civil rights protection. There, she submitted the hard drive under an alias Witness X. The intake attorney, an elderly man, nodded slowly after listening to her say, "I'm not doing this for credit. I'm doing it because I don't want to see another mother die begging the system to listen." When Jenna returned to the Brookgate district, something felt off. Her computer password had been changed while she was away. Her desk was tidier than usual, and inside the drawer, a small note, unsigned. "Don't open the door unless it's daylight. From someone who used to believe like you." Jenna folded the note without flinching. She didn't panic. She knew, from this moment on, she was no longer just an officer. She was a witness. Somewhere else in Brookgate, Darius received an unmarked package. Inside, an encrypted hard drive and a handwritten note. "She did her part. Now it's your turn." Darius connected the drive to his decryption rig. The screen lit up with folders: Reed, audio log; Holloway, approval chain; Mercer, coerced statements; hidden flags, internal filter system. He nodded. "Thank you, Insider. Now it's time I make sure the entire city knows what you've been hiding. Once might be an accident, but 3 times? That's a strategy." Darius Knight sat in the small room behind his mother's house, the glow of the monitor illuminating eyes no longer bloodshot with rage, but razor-sharp with clarity. On the table sat the hard drive from Jenna Carter, the memory card Lorraine had left behind, and a wall-sized map tangled with threads like a battlefield operation. He opened each file in sequence. Complaint record number 1. In 2020, a 17-year-old suspect was slammed to the ground after surrendering with hands up. Complaint dismissed due to insufficient evidence. Record number 2. A single mother was pepper-sprayed while holding her baby outside a supermarket. The police report labeled it disorderly conduct. Surveillance footage was never released. Record number 3. A black man was handcuffed in a park for matching the description of a wanted individual, despite having clear ID on him. All 3 cases had one thing in common: the arresting officer, Logan Reed, and the final approver of every internal report, Brent Holloway. Darius opened the next folder, approval chain. Inside was an internal Excel spreadsheet with columns: officer, case, supervisor, resolution code. He ran the file through a data matching algorithm, and in under 4 minutes, a pattern emerged. Reed had been granted override approvals at least 7 times. Holloway had personally removed internal alerts involving Reed 4 times. 2 complaints had disappeared entirely from the system within 48 hours of being submitted. No more doubt. The system wasn't broken. It was operating exactly as it was designed to conceal. On the screen, Darius typed in bold Holloway equals central node. Reed, the enforcer. The system equals the mask. He began constructing a behavioral map, not to indict one man, but to expose the machine. At a small cafe in Charlotte, Jenna Carter opened her phone. A message from Darius appeared, just 1 line. "You were right. This isn't a glitch, this is the operating system." She typed back, "Then it's time we rewrite the source code." At Horizon News Network, Reverend Caleb Mason received an anonymous email. Subject: Reed isn't just a cop, he's a model. Attachment: Darius's data map titled Duplicate Reports, Correlated Behavior, Not Coincidence. At that same moment, inside Eastbridge PD headquarters, Holloway had just finished a media strategy meeting. As he stepped into the hallway, he saw something taped over the nameplate of his office. A small slip of paper, 6 words written in red ink. "I know everything. DK." His face went pale. Truth doesn't need to scream. All it takes is one video and someone willing to listen. Early Monday morning, the Horizon News Network newsroom erupted in a rare kind of chaos. The editorial department had just received an unmarked envelope. Inside, a USB drive and a handwritten note with just 4 words: "No warning, no weapon. On the USB, a 17-second video shot on a handycam. The footage was shaky but unmistakably clear. Lorraine Knight standing at her front door. No weapon, no shouting. A police officer draws his gun, no warning. A single shot. Blood spreading across the brick floor. Senior reporter Evelyn Draper watched the clip twice. On the third viewing, she stood up and called the content director directly. "This isn't just another police shooting. This is an indictment of an entire system." 11:05 a.m. Horizon airs a special report. Breaking, exclusive footage captures the moment Lorraine Knight, a 72-year-old former battlefield nurse, was shot by police on her own front steps. Viewer discretion advised. The following footage may be disturbing. The audience surged. Hashtags exploded. Justice for Lorraine. No warning, no weapon. Say her name. Within 3 hours, the clip had been shared over 5 million times nationwide. 12:40 p.m. At a local high school, a teacher cancels her lesson and plays the video for her students. She says, "This is an American citizen, a mother, a veteran, and she didn't survive because this system decided she wasn't worth hearing." 2:15 p.m. The Brookgate mayor's office holds an emergency press conference. The spokesperson stammers, "We are conducting an investigation and awaiting conclusions from the Eastbridge Police Department." The crowd is furious. From a balcony, voices rise, "We won't wait. Lorraine waited long enough." 5:20 p.m. On Twitter, the official account of the United Oversight Commission posts, "We have received new information regarding the death of Lorraine Knight. A special hearing will be convened within the next 72 hours. In a small house north of the city, 11-year-old Naomi Rhodes sits beside her mother, watching the news on TV. Her mother asks gently, "Why did you record that video?" Naomi doesn't look up, she just grips the handycam tightly. Because no one else would look. Meanwhile, Darius Knight is at an undisclosed location. On his laptop, he tracks every media development, sharing charts, public reaction metrics, and real-time data aligning with the behavioral map he constructed earlier. An email notification appears. Sender, Jenna Carter. Subject, "It's spreading." Darius doesn't reply. He simply plays the audio file his mother left behind, for the 4th time that day. And this time he closes his eyes. Not from exhaustion, but because the mission had now outgrown him. It was spreading, just like the truth. Once someone finally chooses to listen, there are words that make a whole room forget to breathe, even when the person saying them is no longer alive. 14th floor, United Oversight Commission Headquarters, Washington, D.C. Inside a secured conference room, 9 members of the Federal Investigation Committee were reviewing files on the Lorraine Knight case. Cold white lighting illuminated the space. A digital screen displayed the list of flagged individuals. Officer Logan Reed, pending prosecution. Lieutenant Jenna Carter, classified witness. Brent Holloway, data interference. One of them, Chairwoman Eleanor Bain, tapped the table lightly. "We have many cases under review, but the incident in Brookgate, it's creating a ripple effect. It no longer seems like a single shooting incident." An advisor chimed in, "We should wait for further verification. The media footage hasn't yet been internally authenticated. This could be a case of over-amplified media frenzy." Right then, the main screen flickered. An unusual signal came through the secure internal network, one that could only be triggered by a valid Sentinel protocol device. Access code VANTL04. No one spoke, only a line of text appeared on the screen. To the United Oversight Commission, from Darius Knight. Then an audio file played, a female voice, frail but unmistakably clear. It was Lorraine Knight. I don't know how much longer I'll exist in this system, but if they mean to erase me, if someone is trying to make me disappear without a trace, then please, at the very least, hear my voice once, before they do. The room fell into a deep, absolute silence. No typing, no whispering. Just that voice, echoing in the ears of some of the most powerful people in the nation, like a slap to the face of anyone who had ever dismissed her as just another nameless old black woman. The recording continued, her voice trembling now. I don't need them to believe me. I just want that if someday someone asks why no one did anything, at least one person in that room can say, I heard her, and I didn't turn away. When the recording ended, no one spoke for nearly a full minute. Only the screen kept blinking. Finally, Chairwoman Bain spoke. Her voice caught. Activate Article 27. Assemble a special investigative task force. Full access. No restrictions. Someone whispered, Are you sure? This will go beyond state boundaries. Bain didn't respond immediately. She stared at the final line on the screen, sent alongside the recording. My mother didn't die for the system to stay silent one more time. Darius Knight. That evening, in a small diner in Charlotte, Jenna Carter received a message from an encrypted number. They heard. She looked out the window. The rain had just started falling. Whether it was a sign of an ending or the beginning of a reckoning yet to come, she didn't know. But something had shifted, and this time it wouldn't be swept away. Justice doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it's just a line of text no one dares to erase. 7 days after Lorraine Knight's recording was played before the United Oversight Commission, Darius Knight remained unseen. No interviews, no live streams, no public appearances. The press dubbed him the Faceless Man, and online he became known as the Black Phantom. But Darius didn't care about the noise. He didn't need the world to see his face. He only needed the system to face the truth. Newsroom, National Liberty Journal, 5:12 a.m. The editor-in-chief was pouring coffee while skimming the headlines of the upcoming morning edition. Then an email, sent from an encrypted address, made him stop in his tracks. To National Liberty Journal. Subject, publish unedited. No commentary, no redactions. Body, my mother didn't die for people to hide behind paperwork. She didn't sacrifice a lifetime to be dismissed as a system glitch. She is the evidence, and I am the cipher. If justice didn't come for her, then I will force it to appear. Darius Knight. Attached, an image of a massive evidence board. It displayed the architecture of disappeared cases, connections between police precincts, heat maps of racial profiling stops across Brookgate, and in bold red handwriting, every system has a terminal code. No one knew how Darius bypassed the national paper's firewall, but the piece was printed, verbatim, on the front page of that morning's edition, next to the only known photo of Lorraine Knight. Her in a worn nurse's uniform, smiling on her front porch, summer of 1979. Across social media, new hashtags began to trend. Justice for Lorraine. We heard her. System reset. In a single day, over 17,000 dormant complaints previously marked closed at state police departments were formally requested to be reopened. Within a week, 4 states launched independent audits into their internal accountability protocols. Darius accepted no awards, no medals. He turned down even a formal recognition from the president, who offered a ceremony at the White House. Instead, he sent a single message to the White House press secretary. "If you need a ceremony to pacify the public, don't use my mother's name to do it." In an old print shop in Charlotte, Jenna Carter carefully clipped out the special edition front page. She folded it and tucked it into her coat pocket. She knew, from this day on, every time she testified, she would never stand alone again. And back in Brookgate, a new piece of graffiti had appeared on the concrete wall where Lorraine once fell. "She's not silent anymore, and neither are we." They didn't fall from a punch, they crumbled from a question no one dared to dodge anymore. Eastbridge Police Department, 8:32 a.m. The usually bustling main hall on a Monday morning now stood still, silent as a morgue. Eyes met not with suspicion, but with fear. Because what makes a system tremble isn't a gun. It's undeniable truth. On the chief inspector's desk sat a thick 124-page dossier. The cover was bare, no logo, no signature. Only one line in bold: Aggregated Behavior Pattern Report, Officer Logan Reed, Internal System Data Analysis. Attached, 47 internal records, 31 withdrawn complaints, 6 falsified case files, and traces of data tampering in the system itself. 11:07 a.m. The State Special Investigation Office released a statement. Officer Logan Reed has been formally suspended pending criminal investigation for the use of deadly force without justification and violations of internal oversight protocol. Minutes later, a black pickup truck pulled behind the precinct. Reed was led out, not in full uniform, just a plain white shirt, hands cuffed behind his back, head bowed. On the third floor, Jenna Carter watched from behind a glass panel. She knew this was only the beginning of the purge. Kyle Mercer, the officer who remained silent during Lorraine's stop, was demoted to patrol duty. When questioned in a preliminary hearing, Mercer admitted, "I didn't know I was part of a conspiracy, but I know I said nothing. And that, too, is a sin." Brent Holloway, the high-ranking officer known for sanitizing records, was found to have tampered with 17 separate misconduct cases involving Eastbridge officers. Data forensics showed he had deleted access logs, approved reports without any procedural review, and even sent an internal warning to Jenna Carter. "Stay quiet if you want to keep your position." The Governor's Office of Georgia made a public statement. "We are not just investigating a shooting, we are confronting a system that was deliberately blinded." The United Oversight Commission deployed a federal oversight team to monitor Eastbridge PD for the next 180 days. At Naomi Road School, the principal held a special assembly. There, the 17-second clip she recorded was shown, not just as evidence, but as a reminder. Sometimes justice begins with a small hand that didn't flinch when it pressed record. Darius Knight? No one saw him, but in every investigative document released to the public, one final line appeared in italics: source unknown. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as it was designed to, and that is why it must be rewritten from the ground up. At the Horizon News Network headquarters, in the post-production room, Reverend Caleb Mason watched the live news ticker roll. Breaking: Logan Reed officially charged with second-degree murder. Jenna Carter to testify, federal task force deployed. He nodded. "Lorraine, you've been heard now. They're finally listening. The truth doesn't need to shout, it only needs a box, and someone patient enough to open it." Hearing Chamber, United Oversight Commission Headquarters, Washington, D.C. 9:13 a.m. The large oak-paneled room was as silent as if time had stopped. In the front rows sat representatives from the Department of Justice, the FBI, national civil rights organizations, and major media outlets. But the center of attention wasn't a person. It was a small, dark, ebony wooden box placed squarely at the center of the hearing table. No lock, no label, only a single line carved into the lid by hand. For those who still think justice is just a theory. DK. The presiding chair, Madam Sylvia Merrick, opened the lid with her bare hands. No sound, no one dared whisper. Inside, a black encrypted USB drive, a thick stack of documents, roughly 80 pages, clearly numbered. A faded photo of Lorraine Knight in a nurse's uniform standing among field tents at Camp Orion. And finally, a folded note. No thanks needed, just do what's right. The data on the USB was immediately projected for the hearing. Extracted files from Eastbridge PD's internal system. 47 citizen complaint calls erased without trace. Code strings showing manual edits to access time logs. A data analysis model revealing dense overlap between Logan Reed and Brent Holloway in early-stage shut-down case files. Location data mapping. Darius had traced the GPS movements of Patrol Unit 4721 over an 18-month period. Hot zones, neighborhoods with over 70% black population. 13 undocumented stops without cause. 11 had no official report filed. Sentinel Protocol activation logs. Indications that a national-level intelligence safeguard had been triggered to monitor anomalous domestic activity. Confirmed statement from Guardian Tier Command verifying DK holds special access retrieval clearance. A delegate asked, "Why hasn't this individual come forward?" Madam Merrick responded without hesitation, "Because he doesn't want recognition. He wants the truth." And the truth just arrived in an unlocked box. After the data presentation, everyone in the room stood. There was no applause, but that moment etched itself into history. A moment when an entire system built on denial, deletion, and concealment was finally forced to lift the lid and look inward. Back in Brookgate District, at 165 Lavender Crescent, the house remained shuttered. But the mail carrier slid a handwritten note beneath the door. "Your wooden box arrived, and it was opened. Your mother will be remembered. JC." She never bowed to falsehood, and neither did her son. It was a foggy morning in the Brookgate Cemetery. A soft breeze passed through the old oak trees. On freshly turned soil, the headstone for Lorraine Knight had just been placed. There was no crowd, no media, only a lone stoneworker gently brushing dust from the granite surface. The grey headstone, hand-carved in deep, clean strokes, read Lorraine Knight, 1952 to 2024. Army nurse, mother, a woman who never bowed to falsehood. Beneath that, in a smaller line, etched separately by Darius Knight using a precision laser engraver, her son didn't become a hero. He became the nightmare the system will never forget. No one knows where Darius is. The United Oversight Commission only confirmed he declined witness protection, refused compensation, and requested no expungement of his record. Jenna Carter, who had sent the final note, also resigned. Her resignation form bore only one sentence: "I can no longer defend what is no longer worth defending." 1 year later, at Georgetown University, a criminal law seminar opened with a new special topic. Case study: Lorraine Knight and the Domestic Resistance Network. The first lecture began with the 17-second video Naomi Rhodes had filmed. It ended with the wooden box, now displayed in a glass case. The plaque beneath it read, "Not everyone has a weapon, but everyone has the truth, if they have the patience to keep it alive." Lorraine was not a symbol. She was simply a mother, a neighbor, a citizen, who believed that if she did the right thing, the system would protect her. But when the system chose silence, her son, a soldier, forced it to speak. And from that day on, whenever someone in Brookgate was stopped without reason, they didn't shout, they didn't flinch. They simply said, "I'm a neighbor of Lorraine Knight. You sure you want to make that mistake again?"